Here's the problem. Bill Pulte took over the boards of the companies he's supposed to regulate, cut directors, sidelined staff, installed allies. Then, at a Senate hearing, Scott Bessent gets asked about oversight and points back to the regulator. This is Senator Jack Reed pressing Treasury on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, despite massive taxpayer exposure. Watch what happens next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, the President announced on January 9th, in his words, quote, effective January 20th, 2026, I, as President of the United States, am calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest rates of 10%. In remarks at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the President further said, quote, the profit margin for credit card companies now exceeds 50%. He also indicated that Americans are paying 28, 30% interest rates. You were one of his top economic advisors, Mr. Secretary. Do you support interest rate caps to improve affordability on credit?
I wholeheartedly support President Trump's policy, and I think that what you've just said would be in direct contrast to what Senator Warren said about this administration favoring the big banks. But those are facts.
Well, I don't think my statement indicates at all what Senator Warren said or meant. I wanted an answer. You gave me one. Yep. But let's look at the current situation. We already have legislation that protects service members by putting a 36% cap, not just on credit cards, but all credit relationships, and it protects them from being exploited. And as in my youth, I was a company commander and saw it firsthand. Would it make sense as a first step to provide a 36% interest rate for all Americans, not just service members?
36% doesn't seem like much protection to me, Senator.
Well, it's better than some of the things that are being presented to service members without the rates. These new plans to buy commodities, and sometimes the rates go to 500, and still today, you have entrepreneurs who are charging extraordinary rates, and particularly to vulnerable populations, which I know they don't congregate at Harvard Square, but they also don't hang out in New Haven either. So I think that would be a sound step, Mr. Secretary.
Senator, you haven't seen all of New Haven.
I haven't, but I've seen a lot of it, the parts that you might have missed. The situation at Fannie and Freddie is significant. We have significant federal interest financially in Fannie and Freddie. But under the director, Mr. Pulte, these taxpayer-owned assets are no longer in compliance with the law or with stock exchange listing standards. Pulte has appointed himself as director of both boards, even though the law says, quote, the director may not hold any office position or employment in Fannie or Freddie. A majority of the Fannie board has not been determined to be independent. The audit committee is no longer comprised entirely of independent members, and the committee the governance has been sacked by political affiliates. These all are prohibited by law and regulation, so how will you bring them into compliance, Mr. Secretary?
That would be FHFA, not Treasury.
Excuse me. You are one of the largest, or the taxpayers are. You provided them, Treasury did, not you personally, a $200 million bailout in 2008. And you have no interest in Fannie and Freddie?
I'm very interested in Fannie and Freddie, and I'm interested in fulfilling the mission to the American people to keep mortgage rates low.
What about following the laws?
So again, you should ask Director Pulte. I do not see I don't think this creates a.
Well, all right, you have nothing to do with Fannie and Freddie. Director Pulte has said that you and him are, quote, very aligned, and we meet regularly about the conservatorship. By the way, it's in conservatorship because of Secretary Paulson, your predecessor. According to Fannie and Freddie's annual reports, the companies, quote, continue to rely on financial support from Treasury pursuant to our senior preferred stock purchase agreement, under which taxpayers own 1 million preferred shares and a warrant to purchase up to 80% of their shares. Treasury staff manages those shares and warrants for the taxpayers. Your predecessor, Hank Paulson, placed these companies into conservatorship. So you have the premise or the power to place Fannie and Freddie into conservatorship. I would think that that gives you a little bit of leverage talking to Mr. Pulte about why he's not following the law. You're reneging on responsibilities, Mr. Secretary. And you're also, being the senior person here, your behavior to some of my colleagues is absolutely childish. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
What you just witnessed was a masterclass in how to dodge accountability while wearing a suit that costs more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. Here's what Bessent won't tell you, what I actually looked up. According to 12 U.S.C. Section 4512 subsection G, the Federal Housing Finance Agency director may not hold any office, position, or employment in any regulated entity. That's statutory text, plain, simple, black and white. The law literally says may not. Yet in March 2025, multiple outlets reported that newly confirmed FHFA Director Bill Pulte named himself chair of both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac boards. He removed 8 Fannie board members and 6 Freddie board members, 14 total, as part of a rapid overhaul. He replaced them with his own people, including his general counsel, a former operating partner at his own private equity firm, and Christopher Stanley, described as a cybersecurity engineer tied to SpaceX and X, linked in coverage to Musk-associated government cost-cutting efforts. Stanley resigned just 1 day after his appointment was announced, according to Housing Wire. And here's the kicker. Senate Democrats sent Pulte a letter on March 31, 2025, explicitly asking, does your appointment as chair of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac boards comply with 12 U.S.C. 4512 subsection G? That same letter points out the FHFA oversees entities, backing nearly $7.7 trillion in mortgage loans. Now, why can't Treasury just shrug this off? Because in 2008, when Fannie and Freddie went into conservatorship, Treasury executed senior preferred stock purchase agreements to keep them solvent. According to a New York Fed staff report, that involved $187.5 billion in taxpayer support. Treasury also received warrants representing 79.9% of the enterprise's common stock if exercised, meaning American taxpayers effectively have the right to own these companies. And on repayments, the Congressional Research Service reported that by the end of 2018, Fannie had paid $176 billion and Freddie $117 billion in dividends to Treasury, totaling $293 billion. But they remain under government conservatorship to this day. That's why Reid was asking, because when you're the department that executed those agreements, holds those warrants, and has this level of continuing exposure, you don't get to say not my department when someone potentially breaks the law running them. But here's what Bessent is really doing. He's giving Pulte cover to operate without proper oversight, because if Treasury says this is the FHFA's problem, and it's run by the guy who's potentially in violation, then who the hell is supposed to stop him? That's deliberate. It's the strategy. They're counting on you not knowing that Treasury has the power, as the entity that holds these warrants and executed these agreements, to actually do something about this. So when your uncle at Thanksgiving asks why housing is unaffordable, you can tell him straight, because the guy who's supposed to regulate mortgage giants installed himself to run them, temporarily put an Elon Musk ally on the board, and the Treasury Secretary said it wasn't his problem, despite taxpayers holding warrants for 80% of the companies. So what does all of this mean for you? When you have a regulator who's also the chairman of the entities he regulates, with no independent board to check his power, bad things happen. Fannie and Freddie back nearly $7.7 trillion in mortgage loans. That's roughly half of all home mortgages in America. According to that Senate Banking Committee letter from March 2025, these companies provide access to affordable mortgages for hardworking Americans across the country, including lower-income families and people in rural areas. When their governance is compromised, when conflicts of interest run rampant, when the foxes are literally running the henhouse, mortgage rates don't come down, they go up. But it's bigger than that. We're talking about institutions that required massive government intervention in 2008. The conservatorship happened because Fannie and Freddie were too big to fail, meaning if they went down, they'd take the entire economy with them. And now we are watching someone potentially dismantle the safeguards that were supposed to prevent another collapse, while the person who's supposed to care, the Treasury Secretary, is acting like this is someone else's problem. And what's the point of all this? Reuters reported in November 2025 that President Trump publicly floated 50-year mortgages, with the FHFA involved in exploring the concept. CBS News reported that the idea wasn't fully vetted internally before it went public. Economists widely criticized the plan because the accumulated interest over 50 years would nearly double the lifetime cost of a typical home compared to a 30-year mortgage. As it stands right now, Pulte has served as chair of both boards since the March 2025 overhaul, and there has been accountability sought. Reuters reported on December 4, 2025, that a congressional watchdog, the Government Accountability Office, agreed to investigate Pulte's conduct and alleged misuse of authority and resources. But at that February hearing, Bessent made clear Treasury isn't treating this as their problem. So let me reframe this for you. This goes way beyond housing policy. This is a basic governance question. Do conflict of interest rules apply to powerful people, or not? because the statute says the FHFA director may not hold any office, position, or employment in a regulated entity, and after the March 2025 board overhaul, members of Congress explicitly asked whether the self-chair move complies with 12 U.S.C. 4512 subsection G, and when Treasury's top official is asked about oversight implications in a public hearing, the response can't be "not my department," without people concluding the entire system is built to ensure nobody is accountable. Because when a regulator can potentially violate the law, install himself to run the thing he regulates, remove board members who might object, and the Treasury Secretary, whose department holds warrants for the company, says "not my problem." This goes far beyond a housing policy debate. It's oligarchy with a mortgage portfolio. The law says he may not do this. Reid raised that concern, and Bessent essentially said, "Talk to the guy who's the subject of the question," which, for those keeping track, is exactly what you'd say if you were the getaway driver pretending not to know why everyone's running out of the bank with bags of money. If you found this breakdown helpful, and want more straight talk coverage like this, hit like so more people see it, drop a comment below, and tell me what you think, or what you want me to dig into next. Click the bell icon so you don't miss future videos when they go live, and most importantly, share this with someone and subscribe to support independent reporting that actually holds people accountable. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Stay free.